Hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode of AI Civilization series. Today we will discuss the rise of cognitive systems, why continuity may matter more than intelligence itself, and how these emerging systems could transform organizations, institutions, and civilization as a whole. Imagine walking into an organization that has existed for 50 years. Walls are filled with reports, servers contain millions of documents, archives hold decades of decisions, plans, failures, and successes. On paper, this organization should be extraordinarily intelligent. It possesses more information than any individual could absorb in a lifetime. And yet, something curious happens. A senior leader retires, project manager leaves, crisis emerges, a new team arrives, and suddenly the organization begins to relearn lessons it already knew. Mistakes reappear, knowledge fragments, context disappears. The institution survives, but part of its understanding does not. This pattern exists almost everywhere. Governments experience it, corporations experience it, universities experience it, organizations, humanitarian organizations experience it, entire societies experience it. For centuries, we have assumed this was simply the natural condition of human systems. People learn, people live, knowledge fades, the cycle begins again. But what if that assumption is no longer true? What if the most important development in artificial intelligence has nothing to do with intelligence itself? What if it has something to do with continuity? Because beneath the headlines about models, agents, and automation, a deeper transformation may be taking place. One that is less about creating intelligent machines and more about creating systems that can remember. We usually tell the story of civilization as a story of knowledge. The invention of writing, the rise of libraries, the printing press, universities, the internet. Each milestone expanded humanity's ability to store and distribute information. But there's a subtle distinction we rarely discuss. Information and understanding are not the same thing. For example, a medical textbook is not medical judgment. A database is not expertise. An archive is not wisdom. Information can be copied, but understanding must be recreated. And throughout history, civilization has depended on this recreation process. Every generation inherits information, but understanding must be rebuilt. Every organization stores records, but context often disappears. Every institution preserves procedures, but judgment remains tied to people. The deeper challenge facing civilization has never been information scarcity. It has been continuity of understanding. And once we begin looking at society through this lens, a surprising pattern becomes visible. Many of the structures around us exist primarily because human cognition is temporary. Organizations have hierarchies because no individual can understand everything. Bureaucracies exist because memory is unreliable. Processes exist because judgment cannot always be preserved. Much of institutional design can be understood as an adaptation to a simple reality. Human understanding is fragile, and until recently, there was no alternative to it. From the surface, the AI revolution appears straightforward. Machines are becoming more capable. They write, they analyze, they plan, they assist, and organizations adopt these tools. Productivity increases and amplifies, workflows change. This is the story most of us see, and this is not wrong. However, technological transitions often conceal deeper transformations. When railroads appeared, people saw transportation. When what emerged was national coordination. When factories appeared, people saw machines. What emerged was industrial society. When internet appeared, people saw websites. What emerged was entirely new information architecture. The visible technology is rarely the full story. AI must be or may be following the same pattern. Much of today's conversation focuses on agents, agents that can complete tasks, agents that can interact with software tools, agents that can coordinate with one another. The idea is compelling. Digital workers operating alongside human workers. Perfect. Yet, focusing only on agents may be like focusing on individual cells while missing the emergence of an organism. Because the deeper transformation is not about individual agents. It's about the systems they make possible. The shift is not from human workers to digital worker. The shift is from episodic cognition to persistent cognition. And that distinction changes everything. Human cognition is episodic. We think, we decide, we act, and then attention moves elsewhere. Context fades, memory changes, and understanding fragments. Civilization have spent thousands of years building structures to compensate for this reality. What makes cognitive systems significant is not that they eliminate these limitations. It is that they alter the environment in which those limitations operate. For the first time, understanding itself may begin to acquire persistence. Not consciousness, not sentience, persistence. That single shift deserves careful attention because persistence changes the nature of a system. Consider how most organizations function today. A project generates lessons. The lessons are documented. The document is stored. The next team arrives, and much of the learning process begins again. Knowledge survives. Understanding often does not. Now imagine systems capable of continuously integrating decisions, outcomes, observations, and context over time. Systems that maintain evolving representations of reality. Systems that connect observation to interpretation, interpretation to action, action to learning, learning to future decisions. The result is not simply smarter organization. It is a different kind of organization. An organization whose understanding evolves continuously rather than episodically. And once that becomes possible, deeper questions emerge. Because institutions themselves were designed for a world where cognition was scarce, fragmented, and temporary. So what happens when that assumption begins to break? What happens when continuity becomes a design choice rather than a limitation? At this point, the discussion stops being about artificial intelligence. It becomes a discussion about civilization, because civilization is fundamentally a coordination system. Markets coordinate economic activity, governments coordinate collective action, scientific communities coordinate knowledge, legal systems coordinate expectations. Their effectiveness depends on maintaining shared understanding, and increasingly, this is where modern society struggles. Complexity grows faster than our ability to process it. Information expands faster than institutions can integrate it. Dependencies multiply. Feedback loops accelerate. The challenge is no longer collecting information. The challenge is maintaining coherence. Viewed through this lens, cognitive systems begin to look less like intelligence technologies and more like coordination technologies. And coordination technologies have always reshaped civilizations. Writing did, printing did, communications network did, the internet did. And the question is, whether cognitive systems represent the next step in that progression. Not because they think for us, but because they may help societies maintain continuity of understanding at scales previously impossible. This possibility introduces a new layer into the architecture of civilization. Physical infrastructure moves matter. Information infrastructure moves information. Cognitive systems may increasingly move understanding. And once understanding begins to flow through the infrastructure, the nature of institutions may begin to change. The story of AI is often told as a story of intelligence itself. Perhaps that's because intelligence is the most visible part of this transformation. But visibility and significance are not always the same thing, although they overlap. The deeper story may be about continuity. For centuries, civilizations have struggled against forgetting. Knowledge could be recorded, but wisdom remained fragile. Institutions could survive, but understanding often disappeared. Information accumulated, but context eroded. What's emerging today may be the first large-scale attempt to address this limitation. Not by replacing a human cognition, not by transcending a humanity, but by creating systems capable of participating in the preservation and the evolution of understanding itself. And if that's true, then the question facing us is not how intelligent machines will become. The deeper question is what kinds of societies become possible when understanding no longer disappears as quickly as the people who create it. Because the future may be not defined by artificial intelligence alone. It may be defined by the rise of cognitive systems and by the new forms of civilization that emerge around them. If you enjoyed this episode of AI Civilization series, I appreciate you joining me on this exploration, and I look forward to seeing you in the next discussion. As usual, thank you for your time and attention.